Okay, so basically, as you saw earlier, I've taken all the old blade off the scraper and now I'm putting the new one on. So I basically decided what I can try and do is line up the old yard scraper with the new blade and then try and bolt it on gently with a couple of bolts just to get it in position. Easier said than done, really it's a two-man job I think. But if I can get a couple of bolts on, then the rest won't be so bad. See where this is meant to go. Doesn't necessarily mean it will go. Okay, so I didn't have the camera switched on for the last couple of minutes because I was trying to get this rubber onto the back of there on my own, and it's impossible to try and film it while you're doing everything. But I realise now, I think the only way I can do this while I'm doing it on my own is to take this frame off now. These two pins here, one there and one the other side, and that way I can then put the frame on top of there with the bolt sticking up, start bolting that onto there. I think that's the only way I can do it while I'm on my own. If there was a couple of you, you could lift the rubber and someone could bolt the plate on at the same time, but it's impossible to do everything myself on my own. Well, that came off quite well. There's a bit of play in there. I'll tap these off in a minute. There we go, so that bit's off now. Just got to bolt these bits onto here, onto the rubber, and then hopefully I can put this all back onto the scraper eventually. Just keep watching for more exciting instalments of putting a yard scraper blade back on a Twose yard scraper. Okay, so I'm on day 2 of the yard scraper project. Bit of a recap here. If you haven't watched the video earlier, I've been taking off the old rubber, which is this worn out one here, and I hope to replace it with a new rubber on this Twose yard scraper. I've played around with a few things. I'm not, I'm doing the first time I've done this, so on this particular scraper, so I'm learning as I go. I've unhitched the frame off the tractor now, and I've got all the bits off. So what I've done now, I've led the new scraper blade onto the back of the old scraper, back plate. I'm hoping that I can thread a couple of bolts up through here, up through the holes like this, and then that will then poke through the rubber here, like that. And then if I rest that metal plate on there, I can do up the bolts quickly and then do a proper job once I've got a couple in place. So we'll see how we get on with that. I'm going to set it up on tripod so you see me doing it. Doesn't always work to plan, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so you can see I've got a quick fix here. I've got a couple of bolts through. What I have done, these are actually not the original bolts, they're longer ones, and all that's done is enabled me to get that on there quickly. The bolts I'm using, the ones I took off, do seem a little bit short now for this rubber. I don't know whether this rubber's slightly thicker than the old one, but it could be because I haven't tightened them up yet. It needs to pull it in. If I pull it, I'm not going to flip it over, it's blooming heavy now. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bolt these bolts all the way along now. Hopefully then we'll get that on there. Okay, so I'm just doing these finger tight at the moment along here. I can't seem to get the washers on first go. So I think what it is, once I tighten them up, it'll all draw it together, and then I can go back and put the washers on afterwards. The main thing is I'm just glad to get the this back on, really. I was slightly worried it wouldn't all line up. That seems too short. I don't think it's the end of the world if I don't get the if I don't put the washers on. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take out the bolt that I was using earlier, which is a longer one, just to get me going. And that is a good little trick, is to get some longer bolts, because you can see the difference there. Good centimetre higher, longer. All that did was enable me to put the pieces together easier. And it's only when you start tightening them up with the bolts, it draws it all together. Okay, that I reach now. Okay, quite pleased with that. I've managed to get all the bolts done up on the rubber on both sides to clamp it in using a socket set. All I have to do is hold the nuts originally in with my hands, and they didn't really want to turn around. The big tip is definitely to use some longer bolts. As I demonstrated earlier, I held one up. If you thread those through, eventually the bolt that you're using will be that length. But you can see that one's longer, because I found as this new rubber, it's very springy, so when you try and bolt it with the original bolts, the bolts aren't long enough because they haven't compacted the rubber yet. It's only after you've tightened it up with these that you can get these in and get the nut on. So that's a good tip if you're ever changing the rubber, is to get some longer bolts just for a temporary fix while you're clamping it together. Let's have a quick look at it. Like I said, there's that's on this side. Blooming heavy, I tell you. And you can see there, look, clamped on. New rubber clamped on. So what I've got to do now is get it on the frame, back on the frame, before I put the wings on. We're not that far off, really. My biggest worry probably is the alignment of the holes. It's always a bit hit and miss. There is room for movement on here, but I don't know whether I'm going to have to undo that and move that anyway. And how easy it's going to be to bring these wings round, because it's all new rubber and they're difficult to shift. But I think if I get the frame on the back of there, and then I'll go from there.